Hello, I'm Jeff Hunt, and today I'm going to take a look at just some of my collection, and today we're going to look at some roofs, and more precisely a modern truss roof. So we're going to go into some of my survey collections now, and let's take a look. And this was of a fairly straightforward house. Where's the picture gone? And with this house in particular, we can see, I'll show you the type of house it was. So there we are, sort of late 1980s, I gathered. And looking from the front there, it's semi-detached. So immediately looking at that, I'm expecting to see a traditional truss roof. It's quite interesting here that we have the corbels here. I think this was a bit of a design stolen from a slightly early era. But generally speaking, the house was fairly standard and not particularly complicated. Let's go up into the roof space then. And you can see here that we've got blockwork gables. Quite interesting point here, when you look at gable walls, make sure you can see if there's any ties across. This is actually the party wall, not the gable wall. And you can see they've got a block on edge here. And quite interestingly, some mortar repatch. So maybe there was a hole in there at one point for some reason. No reason why that should be there. This block on edge is quite common in this era. And something we have to be a little bit aware of is this gap up the top here, because there really should be some fire separation between there, and very often, whilst there can be some fire separation, there often isn't. And generally, we'd expect to see some material in there, but often there isn't. And we can start to see details now of the main struts, the fact that it's been decked out, that there's some form of insulation here, some cabling that's running in here, and that we've got some bitumen felt, underfelt. So again, that's taken us round to maybe the 1980s, something like that. So that's consistent with what we've seen of the house. And this picture here then starts to show all of the trusses, and what we're really looking for here is continuity, to make sure that they're evenly spread, which these appear to be, that all these gang nail plates are not stressed, and that generally that they're looking dry and not twisted. We can see a little bit of condensation staining up here as it touches the underfelt. And again, in many roofs there are stored items, and so we need to make a note of that so that we can show that those were bits we couldn't see. So here's a general view looking down the wall now. This is looking at the gable wall. So what I need to be looking at here is any protrusions. So this is the soil vent stack, so I need to check that when I go back downstairs to see how that is connected. I would need to take a closer look at that when I get to that end to see if there's no leaks coming through here. We have a light fitting up here. Now whether that is a standard fit or not, that could be the start of DIY electrics. There's a little point in here we can start to see, and if I recall, that was a fan, an extract fan from the bathroom below. Interesting point here, you can see the British kite mark that's on the rafters. This is what you're looking for on any structural roof components, that it is in fact stress graded, and it's very common to find that when roofs have been, refurbished or redone, that they don't use stress graded timber. Again, we're looking for the continuity in all of the trusses, and these seem fine in this location. You can just see here on the gable wall over here, this is the tie that holds the wall in, and on a previous picture I think we could see the cross ties. So again, a Photoshop there of all of the stored items in the roof. Would make note of this chipboard decking, because obviously we don't want that overstressed, and I can't really see all of the insulation, so I would basically say, well, I saw some, but I don't know how much exactly is there. And if that is the sum total of all the insulation, that's really not going to be enough to modern expectations. So side shot there, this is where the flash went off, but it didn't go deep enough. So I would normally then take another shot with my torch. But this can be the problem with some camera flashes, that they don't go deep enough into the roof. And you need to be a little bit careful if you use use mobile phones, that can be the same effect. So we're looking here, some more cables here. I think these are just IT cables, but the cable management in a roof is again a bit of a hint of how well work is done in the house. Electricians are really trained to make sure that cables are nice and neat, because it's a trip hazard in the lofts. You can just see here the diagonal bracing, so I'm looking for 45 degrees in line, on plan, and there is one there. And you can see also that when they've set out the trusses here, they've left the last space here at the end, and that's the proper way to do it, because you want the continuity of the spacing, and then you have the last one. And there you are, there's the photograph with the torch. So I can take a look at the underfelts now. So I'm looking for any rips and tears. This one seems to be fine. There's a little bit of condensation here. Now what we're looking for here really is that not the fact that condensation doesn't happen, it's whether the roof appears to be in balance. It's just the same as it would be for walls. As long as the moisture can calm back down again, everything is fine. So I'm looking here for any consistency and mildew, which might suggest that that's not happening. I'm also looking down onto the insulation to see if there's any drips or anything like that. Looking up at the apex here, this is a good place to look, and we can see here some evidence that this top section may have been changed. Now that may give an indication there's been some leaks in the past, and that top section has been rearranged. Although I notice here that the lap for the second set is above the first one, so maybe they just used a different material rather than that being a retrospective change. Here again is the flexi hose for the inline fan for the bathroom. Not a bad installation, although this really again should be insulated. These flexi hoses are not ideal, and so we might make a notice of that. And again, here is the chipboard decking, which a lot of people use in their loft spaces to store items. But again, you need to make sure that they've not over stored stuff. And if we could have a better view, I would be looking for things like spotlights to see if there's any holes in the loft space, in the ceiling line, that might let moisture up into the loft space. Here again is my shot then of a general shot of the insulation. Always good to take these kinds of shots again to show continuity of insulation here. See slight changes here when people go into the loft space, not that tidy. We're also looking for any mice droppings or bat droppings, just to add that into the mix. Sometimes you see little holes in the insulation there, and that's where the little fellas have just buried in. You can also see activities of their work for gnawing at cables and also at insulation, and the reason they do that is because they've got very good heat sensitive sight and smell, and they think that the heat in the cable is some sort of food supply. So that's really my delving into this particular roof space, looking at all the various items. So if we go back through them, then we build the picture of everything we can see. We're looking at a truss roof. We're checking to see if there's any overstressing or ongoing water ingress. And the evidence we're looking for is any evidence of a lack of workmanship or any incontinuity in insulation or ripping to the underfelt. We're looking for the surfaces that penetrate through that roof space, that they're continuous downstairs. Any new items that are added, we take into account. That the continuity of the structure between the roof and the fabric of the building is consistent and linked together. and that the bracing is consistent. And as we move back out the building, we should then look back at the roof just to check that the roof line is straight. You can sometimes get what's called a little pergola effect here, and that can be the gable moving, but it can also literally be the fact that between the bricklayer and the roofer, they just didn't work out the setting out, and there's a little bit of a problem there. So I hope you've enjoyed that little trek through my picture library, and that gives you some clues of how I look at truss roofs in particular. It's important to recognise that they can be very, very limited for space, and so sometimes you have to be very careful where you tread. Make sure you've got good lighting. I have a headlamp which I put on as well, and make sure I've got a spare torch which I carry with me. And also, if you're going into a large roof, to make sure that you've made sure that somebody knows that you're up there, which is always a useful thing to let people know. So I hope you've enjoyed this part of the video. Do take a look at any of the other videos on my channel, and please like and subscribe.